Hello, it's the end of August and I've got a load of raspberries. I hope you have too. These are autumn fruiting raspberries, so they fruit on the same year as they grow. Primocane is the proper name. You may have had summer fruiting raspberries, they would have come earlier in the season. You treat them in exactly the same way. Now I'm going to make jam because I want to preserve my raspberries, and also it's a way I fund the community garden that I run, selling pots of jam. So I'm going to use my raspberries, and the same principles apply to making any jam, is that you want the same amount of fruit as sugar. So you just weigh your fruit, soften it, and then add in the same amount of sugar. I'm actually going to add in some apples because I've got some, and it will make my raspberries go a little bit further, and it makes a really nice jam. These are discovery apples. It actually doesn't matter that they're eaters. The difference between an eating apple and a cooking apple is not just sweetness, it's often how much they sort of fluff up when you cook them. But discovery apples seem to fluff up fine when you cook them, so they're absolutely fine. One nice thing about doing this is that you can use less than perfect apples. You can see this one's got a little hole in. When I go inside, I suspect the core will be full of little black bits. Yeah, you can see slightly there. This isn't a bad one. But because we're just making jam with it, I can cut out the bad bits and peel my apple, chop them up, and they're perfectly good. So a nice way of avoiding a bit of food waste, because apples like that I couldn't sell because they're blemished. They're absolutely fine to work with. So you've got your fruit. Remember, this applies to any fruit, and we're going to weigh it. I'll come back to these apples in a minute. Take your pan. Always take a bigger pan than you think, because jam rises up the pan when it's cooking. So if in doubt, go bigger and set it to 0. So you've got 0 on your scales. Then I'm going to just tip in my raspberries as they are. That's 680 grams. And then I'm going to tip in these apples as well, which will hopefully be a similar amount. That's interesting, obviously much less dense. That only takes it up to 915. I'm going to do the last couple of little bits of apple. You can add apple to any fruit that you're making a jam from, and let's face it, we all tend to have more apples in abundance than we do berries. So it just makes things go that little bit further. And they've also got a lot of pectin in, because raspberries are very low in pectin. Pectin's what makes jam set, and it needs two things in order to work. It needs high heat and it needs acidity. Well, raspberries provide acidity, but they're naturally very low in pectin. So you can end up either adding commercial pectin, which is no problem, or if you add some apples, that has the same effect. Right, that's taken me up to 950 grams. So I'm going to take this off to the stove and just soften it up so that the fruit's really soft. The weird thing is, if you add the sugar immediately, the fruit doesn't break down, so it will stay in big lumps. And to my mind, that doesn't make a good jam. So I soften the fruit first, maybe mash it up a bit, and that's the point at which we add the sugar, which, remember, is the same weight as the fruit that you'd already put in. Okay, so this has been on the stove for about 10 minutes, but don't do it by time, do it by what it looks like. Here you can see it's broken down, so it's sort of sludgy. Not many definable lumps in there. Okay, so I've weighed out the same mass, of sugar as the fruit, and I'm just going to tip the whole thing in. By the way, if you wanted to make a seedless jam, at the stage before you put the sugar in, you could just send the whole thing through the moulie, because I know some people struggle with seeds. Oops. There we are. Look at that. Ooh. Right, the next stage is to boil this vigorously on the stove on high heat, stirring a lot until you reach the setting point, which is a vagary, a nebulous area, but I look at it when it sort of hangs off the spoon before it drips down. Sorry, that really doesn't help, does it? And once we've done that, we'll pop it into jars. So this has been boiling on a high heat for about 15 minutes, and I've been stirring quite a lot, otherwise the bottom can catch and burn, and that's a bit disastrous. I'm satisfied that it's reached a setting point, so when I hold it up and watch it drop off the spoon, it sort of hangs in a gelatinous way. So that's all good. Now your next step, and this is crucial, is decant it into a jug. Don't try to go straight from your pan into jars, it will go wrong. You'll get burnt and make a mess. So in it goes. And this is the time when you might get a little bit spattered. Okay, use a spatula to get it all out. Oh, it looks so good. Then from the jug into the jars. And then part of keeping the jam mould free, half of it you've done with the sugar, but is to pour it to the very top and seal it immediately. Like that. And that should keep for at least a year. If you leave a big gap, then there's too much oxygen there, the microorganisms have got stuff to respire with, so you're more likely to get fungal growth on there. One last thing, if you're making your jam just for yourself and you're not too worried about the keeping value, you can put far less sugar in. You can put even half the amount in and it will still be completely delicious, arguably more delicious, but it won't keep as well. So you must keep it in the fridge, or it will keep out of the fridge but not for quite so long, a bit like lemon curd.